What's going on, fight fans? Welcome to the very first episode of Fight Night, brought to you by Knights of DGen KOD Media. My name is Proto. I'm here with the ever so great Kevdog. Kevdog, how we doing?
Hey, living the dream, happy and healthy, can't complain, super excited to have this platform and, give you guys that entertainment, that UFC alpha, and ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, what an event we had this past Saturday. Some crazy stuff happened. I mean, we had some bad beats along the way. We won some good bets along the way, some plus money. You and I on the same side of a few bets. It went our way sometimes it didn't, but we'll get all into all that.
Yeah, man. The name of the game this weekend seemed like split decisions, man. Was it 6 or 7 total? I mean, I can't recall of a card that had that type of mismatch there. And my goodness, we may have witnessed the knockout of the year. R.I.P. Tony Ferguson. Who doesn't love Tony, man? As a true UFC fan, I mean, he's incredible. So to see him go flatline like that was unfortunate, but that's the name of the game. That's part of the sport.
Yeah, that one hurt my heart big time, watching Tony get absolutely stiff as a board right there. That was horrible. But as to mention on your split decision comment, I did the math. If you bet $100 on every single fight to end via split decision, you would have profited $1,950 on the night, which is absolutely insane.
It's crazy. And it seems like recently we've seen a lot more split decisions. So it's kind of one of those things that, like, when we're looking at these numbers every week, something to consider. I mean, these fights that are close, that we think are close, I mean, who knows how the judges score it. And there was one particular bad beat that we did experience on Saturday. That was Rogerio de Lima. Ended in a split, but that late takedown in the third round, I thought secured it in the bag. If you look at the statistics, it makes sense that he won that fight 29-28, and the fact that all three judges scored it 29-28. It was unfortunate, but that's just a part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, that was a rare one. We heard it was unanimous between all the judges. I felt really confident once I heard that, and then all of a sudden they read off Blagoy-Ivanov, and I was like, what did I miss? What did I watch that they saw differently? But it seemed to be the whole storyline this weekend. The Arizona Athletic Commission, starting off with the whole scale fiasco that went on with the champion Charles Oliveira, and then the amount of split decisions and just bad decisions overall in the night. I mean, luckily we've benefited from a few bad decisions recently. I mean, just last week we hit Andrei Arlovsky in what should have been a decision for Jake Collier. But, sometimes you got to pay in a blood sacrifice. And we did that this week with our first segment of the night, bad beat of the night. You mentioned it before, Rogerio de Lima. We had him both of us had him plus 130. Just didn't go our way. I mean, I hope that we don't have to do this segment every single week. I hope there's a few bad beats for us, but unfortunately that's how we're starting the show off here.
Yeah, no, that was the bad beat. But on the bright side, I think we both hit some value for sure. To start off with yourself, man, you hit that Cookie Monster bet. You even hit the split decision late. So that fight, which was impressive. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts there, and with the Cookie Monster coming out on top.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just get started with our bets right now. How we did. Yeah, I mean, Carlos Esparza, bro, that was a pick I was confident in all week. And part of the reason is because I told you guys it was going to decision. The entire way I said in all of Rose's rematches, it was 4-0 and going to the scorecards. What'd I say? Carlos Esparza was 11-3 when it hit the scorecards too. it just matched up very well for us that if the fight went to the scorecards, I was confident it would be Esparza. And then, judging off how the other fights were going, how the judges were deciding them, I threw out that live bet of the Rose versus Esparza fight to end via split decision at plus 425, and we cashed that one in too. So that was probably the best fight of the night for me. That was up about 4.2 units between the money line and the decision going split. I mean, happy for me. I know a lot of people hated that fight. It went exactly how I wanted it to go from a betting perspective. What'd you think about that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think something with UFC is like there's always going to be trends as the fight progresses, whether it's a particular country winning or Saturday it was the split decision. So just one of those things where you just kind of get a gist of how the energy is going throughout the night, and that was a fantastic call on your end. One of the big ones that I was super high on this past week was Randy Brown, particularly coming in through a decision. Chaos Williams, there's no doubt that he's got the power. He's got the strength. I'm super bullish on Chaos. He's a future top 15 guy, no doubt about it. But, man, Randy when you're talking about the UFC, like technicality outrules power, 8 times out of 10, for the most part. And, Randy is a seasoned veteran where I knew that if he did get clipped, he'd be able to keep pushing forward. And, fortunately we got the right side of that split decision there. We talk about the bad beats, but it's also good when you're on the other side of the split. I think he clearly won the 29-28 for sure. But yeah, man, I'm super, super hype on where Randy can go. And, there was another big one that I liked as a big underdog. That was CJ Vergara. Clayton Rodriguez, I know you're super hype, with him coming through the Dana White Contender Series, training in a fantastic camp there in Brazil. But I'll tell you what, that bright lights on the first fight, those jitters are real. And we saw that with Clayton, his first true UFC fight. And I think he still looked pretty sharp. But when you look at a guy like CJ Vergara, he's already been seasoned. Al, your pal, liking the mustache. I appreciate you. CJ Vergara, man, he's already fought in the UFC. He started with a loss. And I think that first loss, when you come into the UFC, can really do great things. It's kind of like a blessing in disguise. So, by all means, we'll see Clayton back again. He's got the tools to make a run in the UFC.
Sure.
And, I'm sure I'll be on his money line next time around.
Yeah, we touched on it on the Spaces on Saturday, how CJ Vergara had the experience of fighting on a UFC pay-per-view before, and it was in Madison Square Garden. So it's like you don't really get, that much exposure in your first fight as he did in that one. So that was a big edge for you. You hit that plus 280, but I don't want you to be humble now. You hit plus 300 also for Randy Brown to win by decision. And that's going to be part of our plus money payouts here, because that was a great call by you. You got the plus 105 on the money line, the plus 300 by decision, and I think you had a unit on both. So you made out like a bandit in that fight. And I know you mentioned we did get lucky on the split decision there, because he did get dropped in that third round. I know a lot of people had a problem with the judges giving that round to Randy Brown, considering he got dropped. But, me, for one, being a Randy Brown backer and just, someone with a half a brain, I knew that he won that round, because that was all Chaos got off in that round.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, no disrespect to Chaos Williams, excuse me. I firmly believe that this guy's going to make a run in the UFC. I'm not saying up to the top 5, but he's a top 15 guy. He's what, 27, 28 years old. He's training at a camp with a lot of really, well-known UFC fighters. So, we'll see Chaos back, and I'm sure he's out for vengeance for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we had our consensus picks this week. So I think we were on 4 of the same picks here. We were both on Rogerio de Lima plus 130. That was a bad beat. We lost that one. We were both on Shogun Hua plus 200. That one didn't go our way to the scorecards once again. But we did hit the over 1.5 rounds in the Shogun OSP fight at minus 155. That one, we were both very confident in that, spoke about it on the Spaces on Saturday. And we were lucky to get that one out of the way. And like we just mentioned, Randy Brown plus 105, we hit that one as well. So 2-2 in our consensus picks. Normally that number is a little bit higher. We'd like it to be much higher than even, but even's not the worst case scenario here. We could have won 0 for 4.
Yeah, and this is the first week of us tracking this, man. This handicapping of the UFC, it's a roller coaster, but there's always going to be that thrill. And It just didn't go our way. I mean, both of our bad beats ended in a split decision. So one of those being, should have been on the other side. And there'll be a lot more value spots in the future. And starting 2-2, to start off the first week of tracking is, it's not terrible. It could be a lot worse. And I want to give you big props on that Shogun Hua OSP, man, because I guess I hadn't really considered that line, when I was looking at, my plays throughout the week, and we were on those Twitter spaces on Saturday morning. And you mentioned the 1.5 over 1.5 rounds, minus 150, minus 160. And like I was telling you, it's like one of those things where it just clicks and you're like, man, that's value, and it all, if I were to go back, I probably would have thrown a few extra units on it, but it was such an easy bet. I mean, we're, round and a half in, and there's hardly been any damage inflicted on either fighter, zero potential of a knockout. So that was a big call on your end, and super excited to get those 2 losses back this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good for a good call every now and again. I guess.
If the Blue Gatorade King.
We got it on deck, and
stay strapped.
I'm a little upset we waited this long to get into the main event, this main card with Justin Gaethje versus Charles Oliveira. The champion has a name, Kevin. His name is Charles Oliveira.
The king. He's the king. I'll tell you what, it's one of those things, man. He's just so dominant. He is so dominant. To see him dominate the way he did, it was just harmony. It was harmony in motion. It's everything that you want to see in a superstar. And, I have somewhat of respect for Gaethje, but I mean, let's be real. What differentiation did he have from Poirier? There's really nothing that really stood out there. And, it was electric, man. I mean, Oliveira almost dropped Gaethje on his first punch. Gaethje dropped Oliveira once or twice in the first round. And the fact that Oliveira can quickly scramble in those situations to the neck so flawlessly. I mean, when he had that choke in, it was tight immediately. A lot of these rear naked chokes that you see, trying to figure out that angle, trying to yoke it out a little bit and tire him out, finally to lock it in. I mean, the way Oliveira just wrapped it up was absolutely insanity. And, he's got the most submissions in UFC history. He's got, I think he's got one more big fight until we can maybe call him the lightweight GOAT. I think he's the undisputed number 2 lightweight of all time. What were your thoughts on the fight?
I mean, very similar to yours. It was great seeing Oliveira come out with that vengeance, like he was cheated by the scales. And it's like we touched on in the spaces, in these last 3 fights of his, he just plods forward. Like there's a complete blatant disregard for whatever's being thrown back at him. And like you said, he got dropped once or twice by Gaethje, but it's almost like that second time he was kind of baiting Gaethje to the ground with him, it seemed like. It was like a second and a half after he got hit, he went down. And I think he found some comfort in that he knew he could take a shot, go down, and get a second or two to, recompose himself before getting back to the feet, because he knew Gaethje wasn't going to follow him down there. And, rightfully so, I wouldn't follow him down either. And I was just a little bit surprised at how well Charles was in the striking department. I mean, I know we've talked about his improvements in the striking game lately, but he outstruck Justin Gaethje. Like the one spot where Gaethje was, supposed to be better than Charles at, I didn't see him better than him there. Charles landed the knees in the clinch. He landed the hands that dropped Gaethje. He was landing front kicks. He was landing leg kicks. He took a few big leg kicks on his own, but for the most part, he dominated that fight.
Yeah, I mean, the diversity in striking is astronomical. And if you see Charles Oliveira, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I mean, it doesn't even compare to where he's evolved today. It's like night and day, man. I mean, early on in his career, I mean, he started off 10-8 in the UFC, right? Just to go on this 11-fight win streak. I mean, it's just it's one of those stories that'll go down in the history books, man. Just his story and the way he's been able to overcome all this adversity, all those losses early on, to lead him up to this point. It's historical, and it's been an absolute beauty to watch.
I don't know about you, Kev. I mean, I'm sure I know your answer, but I would love for the UFC to just reinstate his belt.
Man, it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. That half pound over, who knows if he even was a half pound over. There's talks that the scale on the back was miscalibrated. There was talks that, Tony Ferguson hopping on the scale could have screwed up this, the calibration there. It's super unfortunate. It's super unfortunate, but, like I kind of alluded to, I felt like when he officially missed weight, that just gave me so much more confidence in Oliveira, because he's really not one that's gonna, crap the bed. I mean, he's game. He's ready for it. And the fact that he stripped the belt, I think Dana stripping the belt, I think that lit a fire under his buttocks. And what a way to perform.
Yeah, I mean, from a betting perspective, we saw Oliveira get as high as minus 190 throughout the week. And then as soon as he missed that weight, the line got down to minus 125, which is, so disrespectful. I mean, I get it that, that picture came out of Gaethje on the scales. He was at 165 already while Charles was still cutting weight. So a lot of people took that, and they ran with it. And luckily, since I got Gaethje in early in the week at plus 155 and plus 210 by knockout, I was very fortunate to hedge my position.
Yeah.
So I was able to get Charles Oliveira by finish at plus 110, made out, positive whatever way the fight went on. And that's one of the advantages of getting your bets in early in the week, that you get to take advantage of line movement. We knew this line would move closer, but we really got, at least myself, I got a gift by the line going down to minus 130, minus 125. And, I feel stupid for even putting my Gaethje bet in the first place in hindsight, but, sometimes it just works out that way. And I want to ask you, what do you do with each of these guys now? What do you do for Charles Oliveira, who you matching him up with next? And then what do you do with Justin Gaethje next?
Yeah, I mean, with Oliveira, it's a no-brainer. I mean, look, Beneil Dariush was to fight Islam Makhachev. Dariush got injured. Who knows really where he's at in that state? And in this sport, you got to keep the wheels turning. You can't delay certain matchups, I feel like. And Islam Makhachev, that's the fight to make with Charles Oliveira, man. I mean, Makhachev has been proven to be an upcoming star. He doesn't have all the wins on his record, but that he has that it factor, which is really hard to come by in that division. And not to mention that, Khabib is right behind his corner. And, you have this whole narrative of who's the lightweight GOAT now. Is it Khabib still? Is it Charles Oliveira? And then you have this guy named Makhachev, who's essentially a Khabib protege coming up. It's the fight to make. It's just a matter of where. There's talks that they're putting together a fight in Abu Dhabi. There's talks that it could be in Brazil. Of course, there's your MSG card in New York that could be going down. So there's options. Yeah. So there's options for the UFC. I just don't see anyone else worthy more than Makhachev at this point. Of course you have Conor McGregor knocking on the door, but as a lover for the game, I know all the Conor fanboys are going to want to see it. Who doesn't? He's the entertainer. But when you're talking, strictly, mixed martial arts, what is a great matchup for Oliveira? What's going to be a banger? The fight to make is Makhachev. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. It's funny because right after the fight, I'm still in the camp where I'm like, well, Islam still has to beat someone in the top 5, give him the Dariush fight. And then the more I sit on it, the more I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Just do Islam versus Oliveira. It's the fight we all want as fans. It's the fight that we all need to be able to see, like, how would Charles have stacked up against Khabib if Khabib didn't walk away at 30 years old? And, Islam is not Khabib. Let me go on record saying that he's not as good as Khabib. And from a selfish betting standpoint, I mentioned this to you earlier, I can't wait to get Charles Oliveira plus money. I mean, early look-ahead lines were minus 350 Islam Makhachev in this fight before Saturday night happened. Ever since then, I'm seeing early lines around like minus 240, minus 250, meaning I'll be able to get Charles Oliveira, the champion, at plus 190, plus 200, and I think it's a winnable fight for him. But I'm with you. I think that Charles Oliveira should get Islam Makhachev in the next fight. I don't think it should be in Abu Dhabi. Maybe in UFC Paris, September 3rd. That's a good date. That's about 4 months from now. So, it gives enough time for Charles to go back, get a full training camp in. You're not keeping Islam out too long either by doing that. Yeah. And, on the Justin Gaethje side, you have a pretty difficult situation because he already fought Michael Chandler, right? He already fought Dustin Poirier. I don't think a fight with Beneil Dariush is going to do anything for the fans. It's not who people want to see Justin fight. He's an entertainer. You want to put him in entertaining fights. So I think you give him the winner of Rafael Fiziev versus Rafael Dos Anjos.
Yeah, I think that's a solid pick. I'm just going to read off these top 10 lightweights here, just to kind of give people a perspective. Of course, you've got Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Islam, Beneil Dariush, Michael Chandler, RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos, Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson, and Fiziev. And so, I mean, as we can both kind of understand there, most of these guys kind of have a trajectory that is not involving Gaethje. It's just a fact, Yeah. Of course, the Beneil Dariush is there, maybe. It's kind of intriguing because Makhachev was supposed to fight him, and with Dariush getting injured, I'm not really sure of the entirety of that injury, if he's going to be out for the rest of the year, or if maybe we could see him in the fourth quarter of this year. So, if he's coming back, if he'll be good to go this year, I think that's the fight to make with Beneil Dariush, with things, with the injury, things just kind of change up. But, that Rafael versus Rafael fight is going to be an absolute banger coming up here in a few weeks. And, yeah, I mean, the winner of that one, I think, is more than deserving to see Gaethje,
Yeah, and the winner of that one deserves a top 5 opponent, right?
100%.
And, it's interesting. Gaethje hasn't fought Dos Anjos to this point. I think, if he comes out of that, that's a good matchup to make. It sells some tickets. Same with Rafael Fiziev, the way he fights. That style would be a banger if you got Fiziev versus Gaethje. I think it's a good one. I think, we might be able to look out and see Dustin Poirier versus Beneil Dariush at some point. Who knows?
Yeah, man. And without further ado, why don't we hop onto this sleeper of a co-main event? Rose Namajunas, Carla Esparza.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to pull the load on our back here to make this fight somewhat entertaining in our recap, because we all know they didn't do it for us. Probably the worst UFC fight I've ever watched, and I watched Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis. I watched Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero. And I think this one tops it for the least entertaining UFC fight of all time.
It was brutal. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Rose wasn't really showing her game at all, which is, staying on the feet, that crisp boxing combinations. She was very timid. I understand the logic. I mean, Carla Esparza's path to victory is to rely on the wrestling there, take this to the mat, and yeah, I didn't like what I saw. I was, like I said, I know you had that bet on the split decision, and by all means, I'm super glad that you hit that. But like I was saying, man, I think this fight should have just ended in a vacant draw. I mean, it was just Esparza just didn't deserve that. And, I'm really intrigued of where they're going to go next with both fighters. It's just unfortunate. You come into the UFC and you want to put on a show. It's entertainment, I get wanting to put in that defense and, not busting up your face like Rose was saying, in the press conference, which I thought was kind of disturbing. But, part of the sport is violence, and we simply just didn't see it here.
No, and, as a co-main event, you expect so much more. I mean, luckily for them, we had such a good main event. We had such a good fight before them with Chandler versus Ferguson. But it really is. It does leave a sour taste in your mouth. You're paying, what, $75 for the pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. They come out, they do that with a title on the line. It almost seemed like Rose is trying to play a little bit of the Israel Adesanya game, stay at range, take away all of their threats just by not getting close to them. But she forgot the part where you actually have to return fire and get your own shots off. And I have to say, I was a little bit surprised listening to what her corner had to say in between rounds. I think her husband, Pat Barry, there didn't do her any favors, saying, this fight's going exactly how we want it to go. You're doing great. The boos are good for you. It means you're doing the right thing. And then Trevor Whitman, for as good of a coach as he is, we didn't really see anything from him that inspired Rose to actually get her offense off. It wasn't until the 5th round where he said, let loose and have some fun. And even then, we didn't really see much of anything. She landed a takedown of her own late. She really thought she won that whole fight, which was so surprising. And, luckily for me, a judge thought so too. I mean, I thought for sure it was going to go to a unanimous decision for Esparza. So I lucked out getting one judge to think Rose won that fight, so I hit my split decision bet. But, that was just a bad fight. And then, whenever a fight is that close, you expect there to be a rematch, right? And especially with the title on the line. But even Dana said afterwards that, it's not a rematch I'm rushing to make. It's not a rematch the fans want to see. So that leaves you in a sticky situation because you have Carla Esparza, who's the champ now. She's going to give you boring fights, especially as the champ. It's not what the UFC wants. Rose was perfect in that position because she put on a show whenever she was out there. So, if we want to play matchmaker for these two, I think I'll start with Carla Esparza. The obvious play is that she gets the winner of the fight next month between Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Zhang Weili.
Yeah, Zhang Weili.
I'm drawing a blank here, but I think that's the obvious play there.
Yeah, I mean that's the clear play. I mean, both of these women are top 5, top 4, I think. So and they're fighting next month in Singapore, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Singapore.
So they're fighting in Singapore on the next big card, and I mean that's clearly the fight to make, right? That's you kind of just get that feeling that some of these fights is a fight for the next shot at the belt, and that's the fight. Esparza is going to have Weili or Joanna next. There's just no argument there. I did want to say a quick stat though in regards to this fight, just for a perspective for the fans, right? So in the Oliveira Gaethje fight, right, when 3 minutes and 32 seconds, there were 51 significant strikes. Okay. In this Rose Namajunas Esparza fight, there was 67 in 25 minutes.
Disgusting.
It's
absolutely disgusting.
Gross.
Imagine, look at those stats. 22% on your strikes. You're 2 for 11 on takedowns, and you defeated the champ on the scorecards. That paints the whole picture you need to see right there. And that goes to ask, what do you do with Rose after this? If she's not going to rematch for the belt, I mean, I know who I like her to face. Who do you like her to face?
Yeah, I think there's one woman out there who's on a mission, and it's to the belt. And the way Rose talk in those press conferences, man, I would love for the UFC to feed her an absolute animal. And that absolute animal is Marina Rodriguez. I mean, She is so sharp. She's so crisp. She's on a 4-fight win streak. Her only loss in the UFC is a split decision to Carla Esparza. That's the fight to make. I mean, there's no doubt that Marina deserves this fight. She deserves one more fight. And then if she wins that, she's off to the belt. That's the fight to make. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm with you 100%. I think you could main event that, on a fight night. That would be a great main event, 5 rounds. I'd love to see all that action. Like you said, it sets up striker versus striker. And Marina Rodriguez is lethal. She is a bully. We just saw what she did to Yan Jonan a month ago. Yeah. And Rose, that's the kind of fight the UFC should put her in, is where she's going against another striker, an elite striker. And, the winner of that should get the winner of the next title fight.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt that Marina's the play. I mean, Marina doesn't really have anything planned yet. No. She just fought. I mean, it was probably within the last 6 weeks or so, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Uh-huh. So, I mean, she's looking for a matchup. Rose obviously coming off a loss here. There's clear evidence that Rose is not going to get the rematch. Number one, she's not deserving. Number two,
rightfully so.
Yeah. Rightfully so. The fans don't want to see that. I mean, there's going to be no differentiation between the fight that we saw on Saturday and their next fight. It's going to be very similar. Low volume, staying cautious of the takedown. It's just, let Rose deserve it, and there's a lot of speculation that, Rose was the worst champ out of all the divisions coming into this fight. So I think, giving her Marina Rodriguez to see if she's legit, if she's worth being in the top 3, that's the play. That's the play.
And, speaking on things that fans don't want to see, let's get into our next fight with, the kick scene felt around the world, I guess you could call it, with Michael Chandler just kicking a field goal right through Tony Ferguson's face, knocking him out in the second round. That was one of the worst moments I had to sit through as a UFC fan. I'm going to be honest with you.
It was it was brutal. I mean, listening to Tony Ferguson throughout the week, just watching his trajectory to the top, going on a 12-fight win streak in the UFC in his prime. There's no pure UFC fan that doesn't like the man. I mean, he is just such a lovable guy. He's just the GOAT. He's the man. And to see him perform in the first round the way that he did, that vintage Tony Ferguson.
He looked good.
Putting it on the hammer. I mean, knocking down Chandler. I mean, you guys look at the scorecards. He won for the first round. All three judges scorecards. And there's no doubt that Tony had the cardio to continue. It was just a matter of missing that. So, the fact, like, if he could have avoided that, if he could have avoided the knockout, I truly think that Tony could have had a chance to win by decision, which is
He
crazy.
would have won 100%. The longer that fight went on, the better it was for Tony. We
100%.
saw him clip and drop Chandler seconds into the fight. We saw how capable he was on the feet. And even when it got to the ground, he was hitting Chandler with some nasty elbows, shades and blades all night long. And he, I think Chandler was on top for the last 2+ minutes of that round. And the judges still think that he won the fight. That goes to show how good he looked. And, you're just always in danger when you're against Tony Ferguson. But in this case, he was in danger against Michael Chandler. I, for one, did not see that ending coming. If you told me Michael Chandler was going to knock out Tony Ferguson in the second round with a front kick?
Front kick to the chin. It was a pure
I would have told you you're insane. If you told me Tony Ferguson would be laid out flat, knocked out for 3 minutes straight, stiff as a board, I would have told you you're messing with me.
Yeah, it was, to be honest, it was a scary sight. I mean, the way he got knocked out and his his body just folded in half. I mean, it's unfortunate. Obviously we have such a soft spot for Tony Ferguson, and I'll be honest, it kind of reminds me of when Ngannou knocked out Stipe, because Stipe, he's such a lovable guy. Outside of the UFC, he's a fireman, which is absolutely awesome. And then to see him get folded like a chair by Ngannou, I kind of had that same resentment this weekend, just to see that fashion of Tony. I will say this though, after the fights, I love Tony's spirit. He stayed humble. He definitely wants to keep fighting. And there's even chatter that he got an invite from Charles Oliveira to join his camp, next time he wants to fight.
Imagine that.
I can't imagine that. Tony Ferguson's 38 years old. He's lost 4 straight, but it seems like he still has that energy, that it factor. He still wants to fight. By all means,
if it weren't for that first round, I'd be saying hang it up. But what he showed us in that first round, it's like, I want to see more of this Tony Ferguson, like he's not done yet. And I do want to speak more about Michael Chandler, though, because he is the man that won the fight in, incredible fashion. His backflips after, he did like 4 or 5 backflips right after, jumped on the cage, was looking for his son like a madman. And I think he worked the mic better than anyone has worked the mic in their post-fight press conference. I don't even remember the last guy who did it that well.
I mean, it's almost like he drank a potion and he brought this superpower out of, like, he just looked like the Incredible Hulk. I mean, like the way all the veins popping out of his head, his neck just screaming, who he wants next. And that leads us to our next point. Is Conor McGregor the guy to fight Chandler next? That's the question.
It's a million dollar question, right? I mean, obviously Chandler, that's his dream matchup, right? It's someone he can beat. It's someone who he can make the most money he's ever made in his life with.
Yep.
Although I don't think it's going to be the next fight. I think there's still one more fight. I think Conor, they're still going to give him to Nate Diaz. That's the only fight I think Diaz is going to accept, right? So with that being said, you got to give Chandler an entertaining fight. You can't give him a Beneil Dariush where, it's going to be no promo leading up. It's going to be one-sided. You got to give him a big name. And a big name in 155 that doesn't have a fight right now is Dustin Poirier. And I think that is a fight the fans would love to see. It's a fight that, it's going to bring fireworks. They can both work a mic. They're both big draws. I think, that's – if he could, even if he loses to Dustin Poirier, right, you could still give him Conor McGregor next, because that's a fight everyone wants to see.
So you're telling me that you think Chandler would need 2 more wins for a shot at the belt?
1 more. Well, for a shot at the belt, you see, that's where it gets a little muddy.
Yeah.
Because it's going to all come down to timing here. Oliveira, Chandler doesn't deserve it right now. He lost to the champ. He lost his second fight to the guy who just lost to the champ, right? If anyone deserves another shot first, it's probably going to be Dustin, if I'm guessing, just based off his body of work in the division throughout the past few years. I think if Chandler wins that fight against Poirier, say they make that, he'll have to go through, Dariush or, another title eliminator fight before then. And, who knows? At that point, he might just choose Conor McGregor.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up Dustin Poirier, because obviously he doesn't have a fight. I've been seeing a little chatter between Colby Covington and Dustin Poirier.
That's not going to happen.
I know they're in somewhat different weight classes. It would be a banger, but the thing is what are like the implications afterwards, right? It's kind of just for the fans. And of course, you mentioned the Nate Diaz Conor McGregor fight, and we saw a leak not too long ago of maybe Chimaev eating up Nate Diaz, which from what I saw, they interviewed Dana after the fights and they asked if there's any truth to that, and he said yes. So
yeah, but that doesn't mean Nate's going to accept it, I
mean, he would be a fool to, unless he wants to get eaten alive, which I don't think he wants. But
I got to say, did you see Michael Chandler calling for the Nate Diaz fight today?
I haven't.
That's a fight all over.
It's a money fight. I mean, at the end of the day, Nate Diaz is a dog. I mean, who doesn't love Nate Diaz?
That'll be a fun fight because in that fight, you really don't know who's going to win. We saw Chandler get dropped by Tony Ferguson, right? Nate Diaz has, he has the power. He's got the boxing that he could clip Chandler. If it goes to the ground, he could submit Chandler. That would be a fun fight. I think if they can make that fight at 170, let Chandler not die for once on the scales the way he gets sucked out, I think that could be a fun fight.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'm pretty sure that Conor McGregor is somewhat dealing with an injury, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So, and then he's also putting on a lot of muscle mass. So I don't really know his trajectory. He could very well not fight in 2022.
Probably towards the later half,
Yeah. I just believe, man, while the iron is hot after that call out, I mean, almost every UFC fan probably saw that. And, while the iron's hot, man, after that fashion of a knockout, see, like if Chandler had cruised to a decision, to throw him Conor McGregor probably wouldn't be the play because, unanimous is nothing exciting, maybe a few big knockdowns here and there. But in that fashion to front kick, Tony Ferg, knockout of the year, I think it's got to go to Conor. If Conor's ready, if he's healthy, that is the fight to make. And with that call out, Chandler willing to go up to 170 for that fight. The fans are going to love it, and I'm really excited to where they're going to go with Chandler. Now, the question is, what do you do with Tony Ferguson? Because like this man, I mean, he's still somewhat in the mix. I mean, he's technically top 10, but at this point in his career, I don't think he has much potential to go for a belt.
No, but that name Conor McGregor, that kind of makes a little bit of sense. Him and Tony, they were going back and forth today on Twitter. They had the Twitter fingers, going at it. And they have some history between each other. They've yet to face each other. It's just a matter of Conor's going to want to go down to 155, right? Both on losing streaks. It's a winnable fight for both of them. It would sell through the roof, more tickets than anything. But it goes back to whether or not Conor McGregor is healthy, if it's a fight he wants to take. But, getting McGregor out of the picture, because realistically, we could say McGregor's the next fight for any of these guys. I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm going to say Bobby Green. I think Bobby Green versus Tony Ferguson is a fight that the fans would love to see. It's not a fighter who will, send Tony to the shadow realm again, for lack of a better word. And, it's a winnable fight for both guys. Bobby Green, he's owed a favor by the UFC after taking that Islam fight on short notice. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see them pull that one together.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love Bobby Green? I mean, he's been around forever. He's shown flashes. Recently in his career, obviously he stepped in on short notice to fight Islam Makhachev, which is takes balls. I mean, Islam Makhachev is a scary dude, and not everyone that's offering to fight him is going to accept that fight. So the fact that he even came in and showed up, much respect to Bobby, even though I had the most respect for Bobby. With that said, there's another guy who I'd love to see Ferguson fight. And this is kind of like, again, off of a limb. It's just one of those things at this point in Tony's career, like you can't throw him a top 5 guy. You can't maybe even throw him a top 10 guy at this point. Throw him a guy that's kind of either in the mix, on the up and coming, or a veteran like Bobby Green. And a fight that I'd love to see, who knows if it'll even happen, but Tony Ferguson versus Jim Miller. Now, these fighters have been in the division for like 13 plus years, 14 years, maybe, I don't know. But what I do know is that Jim Miller has the most UFC fights of all time. And this guy has never fought Tony Ferguson. They're in the same division. They've been in the same division for quite some time. And, Jim Miller, he's won his last 2 inside the distance. So like this guy is at this point, he's 38 years old. same age as Tony Ferguson. You know, they're both at this weird point in their career where, Jim Miller, A1 is he's throwing flashes of, finishes inside the distance. He's still got it. And we saw Tony, he still has it. They're both 38 years old. Mind you, Jim Miller, he's kind of far back in the rankings, but who cares? I mean, again, this is one of those for the fans, who's been around the UFC for a point of time. They've seen these guys evolve tremendously. And, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what they do with Ferguson here.
I actually like that fight a lot. Another fight you keep seeing thrown around is Dan Hooker. Two guys on similar trajectories. One's top 5, right? On a little bit of a skid, bad, knockout losses in their last fight out each. That one makes sense too. But, you were just speaking about legends in the game. We saw a fight between 2 legends, between Shogun Rua versus Ovince St. Preux on the main card. This was pretty much a snoozer. We touched on it earlier from a betting perspective. We did hit the over 1.5 in this one. Pretty nice. We threw a sprinkle on Shogun to win plus 200. That did not happen. Not much to talk about in this one. It's just kind of they did 2 legends a favor, throwing them on the main card in an event like this in front of fans. You saw Ovince St. Preux get the decision victory. What do you do with these 2 guys? I feel like Shogun, he said he has 2 more fights left. This was one of them. He has 1 more left. You got to give him another legend, I think. One guy that stuck out to me was Ed Herman. He's a guy who's been in the UFC for a very long time. He has a lot of wins inside the octagon. You don't want to give him to a killer. You want to give him to someone, who's been around for a while. So, it's not the flashiest of fights, but it is a fight between 2 of the older vets in the UFC.
Yeah, and I mean, these guys are the definition of a dinosaur in the UFC. I mean, they're both in their high 30s, reaching that 40 mark. And no disrespect to both of them. I mean, Shogun Rua is a former UFC light heavyweight champion of the world.
Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer, 100%. I mean, he comes from that Brazilian background, and he's one of those Brazilian fighters that when he came into the UFC and just to see his trajectory, I mean, he really kind of opened that door and for that division in Brazil. And so, in OSP, he's been around. I mean, he's fought some absolute legends of the game. This was just one of those fights that 2 legends, in their, not in their prime, just to kind of just sling and bang. And I don't really have anything for these matchmakers, man. I would love for them to just go to Bellator because, like, again, with the UFC, man, you want to see entertainment. You want to see people just get bloodied up and violent. And, we were both on the 1.5 rounds, which the definition of this fight was there literally was just no damage done. I mean, it was just really poor outing. And, he's got 1 more fight left. I say trade Bellator, give him 2 fights if you go to Bellator, and otherwise, kick rocks. So
you can't do Shogun like that. You can't ship him off to Bellator. But I do have a matchup for OSP. We had a matchup with Felipe Lins that got scrapped a few times. So I think that fight makes sense. You rebook that one and let him go at it. Otherwise, I honestly do not care who these guys fight next because, for once world-class fighters in the UFC, it looked like such a low-level affair. So, I guess we'll see how that one pans out. And then we got the main card opener to touch on here. We had Randy Rude Boy Brown versus Chaos Williams. We both were on Randy Brown here, plus 105. We lucked out with the decision here. I don't know if you want to call it lucked out, but with the way the judges were scoring it throughout the night, I'd say we lucked out.
Oh yeah, and you said opener to this card, and while we're on that point, we would have loved to see Joe Lozon and Donald Cerrone, but unfortunately, that fight got scratched. They put the Randy Brown Chaos fight onto the main card, which is kind of bittersweet because that was my conviction play of the week. Every weekend I try to put up like just a little brief write up, for the channel and Nights of DGen, and that was the play. Like I loved everything that I saw out of Randy. How that fight went out is exactly how I imagined it to. As long as Randy's chin held up there, I knew he would cruise. I mean, he's just so technical. I knew that he would put out the volume. And I mean, like I've been saying all along, Chaos Williams is a dog. I mean, this guy, someone was saying like he used to get hit by like a baseball bat or something when he was a kid. I mean, the dude is tough. And,
all that.
Yeah, man. And to go the distance with Randy, I mean, I think that's really, really going to elevate his game. Chaos is up and coming, man. And he just happened to run into another top 15 guy on his up and coming run up. Now, mind you, both of these guys aren't top 15, but I firmly believe that they have the talent to be top 15. And yeah, I loved everything I saw about Randy. Really, really excited to where he's going to go next, and along with Chaos.
Yeah, I gotta say, after round one, we saw a completely different Randy Brown. You know, he entered that flow state that we hear that term tossed around so much within the sport, and it doesn't really make sense until you see it, like we saw it with Randy Brown, right? You know, the way he was slipping all those jabs, you know, he was coming in, he was peppering Chaos with jab after jab after jab after jab right in the face. And, you know, it's not like that'll hurt him, but that frustrates a fighter so much that they can't even see because a fist is always coming in. And he did such a good job of utilizing his reach, his length, you know, because he's a tall guy, especially for the division 170.
6'3". That's the tallest in the division.
And you know, once he hit that flow state, it was like watching a completely different fighter than what we saw in round one. And you know, he got dropped in round three, but the way he responded after that, you know, he landed some big shots after he got dropped, which basically stole the round back in his favor. And the volume that he put out there was just tremendous.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Chaos Williams had his moments. I mean, you said it. He dropped Randy. You know, he was landing big shots, and you know, to see Randy survive that, getting knocked down and come back. I mean, that's what you love to see in UFC fighters, man. I kind of allude. I don't want to get too off of a tangent here, but in that Giga Chikadze Calvin Kattar fight, I was so heavy on Calvin because I knew that Giga had never been in those deep waters and how he would respond. But to see, you know, Randy Brown be in those deep waters, you know, on the verge of getting knocked out by someone by the name of Chaos, to see him come back and win, I mean, you just love to see it. And you know, don't get me wrong. I mean, Randy's already fought like 12, 13 times in the UFC. And every time we see him, it just seems like he's a better version of himself. You know, he comes out, he's showing different technique, you know, more confidence. And what do you think is next for Randy? I mean, there's options. There's options.
I mean, you can make the argument that he's ready for a top 15 opponent, right? After that performance on the main card. I do think that there's one more fight for him that makes total sense before we get him into the top 15. And it's the same on the other end. I think you give him to D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez. That's a fight that I think the fans would love to see. And it's almost like a precursor to the top 15 because both guys are right outside the cusp right there. So, you know, winner of that next gets to crack into the top 15. I think I know you think he's ready for the top 15, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, he's been in the UFC, you know, 13 fights. I mean, that's no slouch, you know, and we've seen him grow from being just a young fighter and how he's evolved. And, you know, by all means, Daniel Rodriguez, he's won 3 straight. You could even argue that he might be ready for a top 15 opponent, you know? So we're kind of at this standstill of these two guys that who's going to take that next leap of faith. And as much as I love the D-Rod fight, and it very well could happen, a guy that I'm looking out for that could fight Randy Brown is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I mean, we all know Wonderboy. He's lengthy. He's got that karate style, which in a sense is kind of similar to Randy Brown's, you know, technique in a sense. So it's kind of an interesting matchup. But yeah, you know, Stephen Thompson's 11th right now in the rankings. So, you know, it would be a top 15 opponent. And, you know, Stephen Wonderboy, I mean, he's kind of at that point of his career of, you know, is he kind of still in the mix? Is he on his way out? So this is kind of one of those conviction fights for Stephen Wonderboy if he's built to remain in the top 15 and you know, see if Randy, you know, may want to trade that spot with him.
Yeah, and it would make sense to give Wonderboy a striker now, right? After he faced back-to-back wrestlers with Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad. So, you know, that's definitely a fight that could happen. I'm a little bit nervous if that fight does happen to be a lot of defensive posturing, almost kind of similar to the co-main event this past week. But I do like where you're getting at. I think that if you do give him top 15, it's going to have to be Wonderboy, Jeff Neal we spoke about, or Jiling or Li Jingliang.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot of room, a lot of possibilities for Randy Brown here. But what do you do with Chaos Williams?
There's a fight next month that I'm keeping an eye on, and it's Tim Means versus Kevin Holland. Super great matchup. You know, Holland obviously has been incredibly busy. And man, I think that's a really interesting fight to see maybe what's next for those two guys. You know, Chaos obviously is going to be in the picture. You kind of already alluded to the Li Linjiang, aka Chimaev's child, who stopped by at his media day a few weeks ago, which I thought was very comical. And then of course you have Jeff Neal. I mean, these guys are kind of in that mix of top 15. I think Chaos put on a performance that, he's not really worth taking on a guy that's kind of a few steps behind him, right? Like he's been in the UFC enough. We've seen enough out of Chaos to continue to give him a test here. I'd love to see either Jeff Neal or Li Jin Liang.
Yeah, it's tough.
Those two guys, they don't have anything planned right now. And, Chaos didn't take a tremendous amount of damage, and knock on wood, I don't think he endured any like significant injuries that are going to put him out for a while. So, of course you have those two guys, and then that Kevin Holland fight, which, they're both, I think, in the top 25 ish. So like they're kind of knocking on the door of that top 15.
Yeah.
It's kind of that same concept of, the Randy and D-Rod fight of who's going to take that next leap forward. And, again, although Chaos took that loss, he's not a fighter that you give him kind of a tomato can for his next fight. He's going to take on somebody that's, somewhat seasoned in the UFC.
Yeah, and I think that's why there's one fight that makes sense to me, someone who just fought inside the top 15. It didn't go their way, but someone that's still right on the cusp, top 20-ish, Max Payne Griffin. I think you give that fight to Chaos Williams. They're both strikers. They both come and swang and bang. So I think that's an exciting one that you could really make happen, because I don't think Chaos, deserves a top 15 opponent after that, being that he's coming off a loss. So, give him someone that just fought in the top 15 that fell a little short. Both guys need to get back in the win rank and climb the ladder a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. That's definitely a really intriguing fight. And without further ado, why don't we take a peek or a little discussion on the fights coming up this weekend? We've got Alexander Rakic. First, you said it, Jan Blachowicz.
Yep.
It's a banger, man. I mean, look, Blachowicz he's a dog, man. I mean, this
Polish
man,
power, baby.
Look, he's had his ups and downs. Don't get me wrong. He beat Israel Adesanya. Well, look, I get Israel Adesanya was 10, 15 pounds lighter than him, but you got to give Jan that respect. I mean, Israel is no joke. But on the other side, Alexander Rakic, I mean, this guy is he's a stud. He's a definition of a stud. He's just so well-rounded. He's on the uptrend. And this is really an important fight for Jan, because, if he happens to lose this, I mean, who knows where he's going to go. We've seen him on 3-4 fight losing streaks in the UFC. So I wonder how much hunger he has left in the tank there versus a guy who's going to come out hungry, who is knocking on the door of that title shot.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, Jan Blachowicz is coming off a title loss against Clover Teixeira, where he really was just outclassed. He never really was in that fight. He, it was remarkable how quickly he tapped once Clover got on him. And like you said, he achieved what he never thought he could by becoming the light heavyweight champion of the UFC, right? That was such a far-out dream for him at one point in his UFC career. He made it happen. And then to lose it in the manner in which he lost it, it just leaves a sour taste in your mouth. And, that's why, the bookmakers have him as the betting underdog this week. Lines open up around like Rakic minus 165, Jan plus 140. That line has since skyrocketed a little bit. Rakic is now sitting at minus 190 on DraftKings Sportsbook. So, it's an interesting fight. Like you said, you have a guy who's hungry in Rakic. He sat out a whole year to get the fight that he's been wanting to get. He took this fight. It got rescheduled because of an injury with Jan a few weeks ago, a month back, I believe it was. Yep. So now, he's finally getting that chance to go after Jan. I think that he's, he's better than him everywhere. Other than offensive wrestling, Rakic does have a 90% takedown defense, though. So, just to give a little sneak peek into it, I do like Rakic here. I think that he's going to win. I'm going to look for ways to bet him. I think I'm going to parlay him with Nick Maximov, the first card on the entire fight card. And, that'll be an even money play right there. So that's an early play of the week right there. Rakic and Maximov. Jan, I think he's lost a step. I think if you see him lose this one, lose one more, he might be fighting Corey Anderson over in Bellator.
One thing that I will mention that we cannot forget about is that Polish power is legit. And you can't forget that. You can't underrate that Polish power by Jan here. I mean, there's no doubt that Rakic is going to put out more volume. There's no doubt that Rakic has, he's got the volume, he's got the hunger, he's got the motivation. But at the end of the day, it really only takes, Jan has that one punch knockout. And, there's no doubt he's still been working. With Rakic, he's so agile, he's so elusive, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Randy fight, just trying to find that chin. And I think Jan is probably going to have trouble here. You had mentioned this earlier, if I'm not mistaken, but Rakic has like what 90% takedown defense.
Yep.
I mean, that's nothing to play around with, especially in a 5-round fight. So, you know, I think the cardio edge is going to lean probably Rakic. You know, with Jan, of course, you have that one punch knockout, and then you also have to keep into consideration the bright lights of the main event. You know, it is something significant, and when it comes to handicapping the UFC, something that I always allude to is that psychological factor. And this is one of those. You know, is Rakic built for this? You know, because we've seen guys steamroll up to the top, they get that big show and they just shit the bed. So, you know, it's a really intriguing fight. Both guys are on an interesting trajectory. You know, of course, next month we have the banger championship fight of this division, right? So, you know, Glover Teixeira and
Yuri Prochazka.
So look, I mean, you know, when you look at it in hindsight, you know, a Yuri Prochazka and a Rakic fight is that's one that people would love to see. I mean, two guys from that Eastern European region-ish, and you know, it's just it's a matchup that is super unique. You know, two guys that are just very, very diverse in their striking and their technique. So I'm really looking forward to that fight. I don't want to get too off on a tangent, but with this Rakic fight, it's going to be a banger. Intrigued to see if there's a finish here. I think that if there is a finish, it'll probably be on the Jan side. I don't know if Rakic really has that pure power to put out Jan.
You ever see that high kick knockout he had in the UFC? I actually owned that moment on UFC Strikes. So, you know, a little soft spot for Rakic here. But,
yeah.
You know, I don't want to get too into this fight right now because, you know, we will do the spaces on Saturday. We'll have more, you know, better feel for this fight, the entire card on Twitter. Usually 11 a.m. Eastern time, Saturday morning, we'll go over the fight, you know, be there. We were there for 2 hours this past weekend, talk about every fight in there. And, you know, who knows, maybe at some point this week we'll pop in at night for a little show like we did last week on Twitter. And we'll talk about that. But I know there's a few more fighters we just want to mention that are fighting on this card that we're excited about. I know you're very high on Tatsuro Taira. He's finally getting that fight against Candelario that got rescheduled from a few weeks ago. And then we got I like Andrea Lee.
Yeah.
She's a great fighter. And then you have the return of Michael Johnson, even Jake Hadley. So there's a lot of hidden gems. Series.
Yeah, there's a lot of hidden gems in this fight. You know, to touch back on Tatsuro Taira, man, I mean, you know, he was supposed to fight 2 weekends ago when it got canceled against his opponent. I don't know. I don't even know. Yeah, he got sick or something. I mean, look, this guy Tatsuro Taira, he's coming out of Japan. I mean, he's just so sharp. You know, these guys out of Japan are absolutely no joke. And something that I also want to allude to is, you know, the misconception, or maybe not the misconception, but the thing of why people like to avoid these Asian fighters is because of the time difference, right? So you know, they're all the way in Asia. They're 16 hours ahead or behind. And the fact that the fight got canceled and Tatsuro Taira has been on this time clock for, you know, a few weeks now, maybe even near a month, I think that's really going to work in his favor. You know, he's going to be at 100% here. He's young. He's only like 21 years old, I believe. And this guy Candelario, so this guy Candelario, I mean, he's nothing impressive by any means. And let's see, rule number 1, never mess with a guy rocking a headband and mustache. I love it. Yeah, man. So, you know, Tatsuro Taira, he's got that Japanese blood. He's got that samurai in him. You know, I fully expect him to come out here and finish. And you know, it's interesting though, because the weekend of his original fight, the line was, I think, like 230 to 250 in that range. Last time I saw it, it was up to -310. So
really?
Yeah, so it's streaming up there. I saw it go down to 290, up to 300, and last I saw it was 310. So it's really interesting how that'll play out. Absolutely love that early on prospect starting off the card there, and yeah, it's going to be a banger of a card, as it always is.
Yeah, make sure you lock that line in now if that line's going to keep steaming up a little bit more. You know, get him at 290 while you still can, because probably by fight night he'll be around -375. You have to imagine. But like I said, we'll touch more on this Saturday for Twitter Spaces, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern. You can find us on Twitter at Fight Night, KOD Fight Night, night spelt KNIGHT, as you can see up here. Yes. And, you know, I just want to say thank you all for tuning into episode 1 of Fight Night. And we will be back here every Monday, the same time, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern. And like I said, make sure you check out all the UFC Betting Alpha every Saturday on our Twitter Spaces as well. Kevin, thank you for your time.
I appreciate you, Matt. It's always a pleasure. And, for the people watching out here, me and Matt, we don't put in these hours of research, right? We don't put these hours of research that come out losing every week. I mean, not only are we so passionate about the sport, but, we have that wisdom to find winners each and every week. So I'm really, really excited for you guys to be a part of this ride that we have going here. The future's so bright. And I'm really looking forward to where Fight Night's going to go. So for those watching, thanks for tuning in. And we'll catch you on the Spaces later this week.